You won the argument. You proved every point. You had the facts. You had the logic. You stayed calm longer than they did, and you still feel terrible. Tired, a little hollow, like you spent something you are not going to get back. Here's what nobody told you. Every argument you have with a stupid person has a price, and winning costs you more than losing does. Schopenhauer calculated exactly what the price is. The number is bigger than you think. And once you see it, you will never argue the same way again. Picture the last stupid argument you had with someone who is very irrational. Maybe it was at work. A coworker who said something wrong in a meeting in front of everyone, and you had to correct them, or tried to. Maybe it was online. Someone left a comment so obviously incorrect that you could not just scroll past it. You had to respond. Maybe it was at home. A family member repeating the same wrong belief they have held for the past 15 years. And this time, you are going to finally change their mind. So, you engaged. You explained. You laid out the facts, the logic, the evidence. You were patient at first, and then they pushed back. Not with a better argument, with more stubbornness and more stupidity in display. This time with more volume, more certainty. You felt it, that heat in your chest, that specific frustration of watching someone refuse to think. 20 minutes later, you walked away. They believed exactly what they believed before. Nothing changed, but something in you was gone. You just could not name what. I know that feeling. I have been in that room more times than I want to admit. Why does this keep happening? The answer is not about them. The answer is about what is actually being stolen from you every single time you step into argument with a stupid person. Arthur Schopenhauer was one of the most honest philosophers who ever lived. He did not make the world sound better than it was. He watched people closely for decades, and what he saw frustrated him deeply. Not because people were cruel, but because they were so profoundly committed to not thinking. Schopenhauer wrote, "The man who does not read is no better off than the man who cannot read." But he also wrote something that most people have never heard, and it is the most expensive idea in this video. He said that every time you engage with a fool, you do not just waste time. You give that fool something they should never have received. Your attention, your mental energy, your emotional state, your reasoning capacity, all of it transferred directly into an argument that was never capable of producing a real outcome. I call this the hidden invoice. Every argument with a low-intelligence person generates an invoice, and that invoice has 5 separate line items. Most people only see the first one. The other 4 are the ones that actually destroy you. Here is what modern neuroscience confirms. Dr. Robert Sapolsky, the Stanford neuroscientist, showed that social conflict, even brief, minor conflict, activates the same stress response in the brain as physical danger. Cortisol and adrenaline flood the system. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought, creativity, and long-term planning, goes partially offline, which means every argument with a stupid person does not just steal time, it temporarily steals your intelligence. In about 2 minutes, I am going to walk you through all 5 line items on that invoice, one by one. Stay with me. Most people think arguing with a stupid person costs them one thing: time. Time is on the invoice, but it is the smallest charge. Line item 1, time. The average pointless argument lasts between 15 and 45 minutes, but the real time cost is not the argument itself. It is the hours afterward, the replay. You walk away and keep arguing. In your head. Same points, same frustration, same outcome, except now you are alone and they are not even there. You are donating your evening to someone who has already forgotten about it. Line item 2, cognitive capacity. After a stressful argument, your working memory is impaired for up to 4 hours. That means the project you had planned, the decision you needed to make, the creative work that was waiting, all of it gets done at reduced capacity. The argument with the fool did not just take 20 minutes. It took the quality of your next 4 hours of thinking. Line item 3, identity erosion. This is the one nobody talks about. Every time you argue with someone who is not operating on logic, you are forced to descend to their level. You use simpler arguments. You repeat yourself. You become louder, more basic, more reactive. And here is the danger. Your brain begins to associate conflict with that version of you, the reactive you, the frustrated, simplified version of your intelligence. Over time, with repeated exposure, that becomes how you argue with everyone. You were sharp before. The fool made you blunt. Line item 4, reputation. When you argue publicly with a foolish person, observers do not see a smart person correcting a fool. They see two people fighting, equal. Schopenhauer said it with brutal simplicity. You cannot shame a shameless person, but you can shame yourself by trying. The moment you engage at that level, you have made yourself visible in a way that serves only them. Line item 5, opportunity cost. This is the one that should keep you up at night. Every 20 minutes you spend arguing with someone who cannot be changed is 20 minutes you did not spend on something that could change your life. The book you could have read, the skill you could have practiced, the relationship with someone intelligent that you could have built, the work that was waiting for your full brain. Schopenhauer calculated this across a lifetime. He believed that the primary reason most intelligent people fail to reach their potential is not lack of talent. It is chronic proximity to low-quality minds and the exhausting, draining, never-ending attempt to change them. Add up all 5 line items. Now tell me, was the argument worth it? Not all fools charge the same price. There are 3 types, and each one is more expensive than the last. Most people make the same mistake with all 3. Same strategy, same engagement, same invoice, except bigger each time. Tier 1, the opinion fool. This is the most common type. You have 10 of them in your life right now. The opinion fool has a strong view on everything: politics, your life choices, how you parent, how you eat, what you drive, what you believe. They share that view loudly and often, and they are completely certain that they are correct. The opinion fool is not dangerous to your career or your life. They are only dangerous to your mental energy because their whole game is to pull you into a response. Any response, agreement, or argument, both work for them. They need you to react to feel important. The invoice for engaging with the opinion fool is mostly line items 1 and 2, time and cognitive capacity. You walk away drained but not damaged unless you keep doing it every day. Then those small charges add up to something serious. Schopenhauer's prescription for this type: silence is not avoidance. Silence is refusal to pay. Never argue with someone whose mind is already made up. The opinion fool decided what they think before you open your mouth. Your logic is not a key that fits this lock. Tier 2, the institutional fool. This is where it gets serious. The institutional fool holds a position, a title, a role that gives them authority over something in your life. The manager who sets your workload based on feelings, not facts. The committee member who blocks good ideas because they feel threatened by them. The supervisor who responds to careful analysis with defensiveness and politics. The institutional fool is expensive because they control something real, and they will use that control to protect themselves from the discomfort of being shown they are wrong. Here is the critical thing about this type. They are not stupid in the way we usually imagine stupid. They are often functionally competent. They got the job. They know the system. They have allies. What they lack is the ability to hold two competing ideas at once without feeling threatened. They cannot be wrong, because being wrong in their mind means losing the authority that defines them. Arguing with the institutional fool adds line item 4 to your invoice in a very serious way. Your reputation inside that system now includes being someone who cannot manage up, who makes things difficult, who prioritizes being right over being effective. The game changes here. You do not argue with the institutional fool. You document, you build alliances, you present ideas in ways that let them feel ownership. You fight the system, not the person. Tier 3, the sacred fool. This is the most dangerous type, and also the hardest to leave. The sacred fool is someone you love, or used to love, or are connected to by blood, history, or obligation. A parent, a sibling, a close friend of 20 years, a partner. The sacred fool has earned exemption from your standards. You forgive their irrationality because of who they are to you. You keep trying because leaving the argument feels like leaving them. This is where all 5 line items hit at maximum cost. Every single one. Time, cognition, identity, reputation inside the family or social circle, and the heaviest opportunity cost of all. Years of emotional energy invested in trying to change someone you love, which is a war that cannot be won, and a peace that was never at risk in the first place. Schopenhauer was painfully direct about this. He had a difficult relationship with his own mother, a successful social woman he saw as intellectually shallow. He cut contact, not in anger, in conservation. He wrote that the most important skill of a wise person is knowing which relationships are worth the cost and which ones are simply charging you for proximity to someone who will never change. That line will make more sense in about 15 minutes. Hold it. There is a strategy called selective silence. It is one of the most misunderstood and most powerful tools in this conversation. The best historical example is Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome. He ruled from 161 to 180 AD. He commanded the most powerful military in the world. He had total authority over millions of people. He was also surrounded every day of his rule by people who wanted something from him. Senators who were corrupt and foolish. Generals who were ambitious and unreliable. Advisors who told him what he wanted to hear. A co-emperor, his adopted brother Lucius Verus, who was reckless, pleasure-seeking, and frequently wrong. Marcus Aurelius could have argued with all of them. He had the power to shut them down, to embarrass them, to prove he was correct every time. He almost never did. Instead, he wrote, privately. His personal journal, what we now call the Meditations, was never meant to be published. It was his internal conversation with himself, a place to process, to think, to maintain his clarity against the daily flood of foolishness that came with governing an empire. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He wrote about the people around him, not with contempt, with curiosity. He studied their foolishness the way a doctor studies a disease, not to argue with it, to understand it, to work around it, to make decisions that did not depend on them changing. Here is the critical lesson. Marcus Aurelius governed one of the most complex human systems in history, and his primary tool was not power, not argument, not force. It was the ability to preserve his own mental clarity against people who would have wasted it. Schopenhauer read the Stoics deeply. The same principle runs through his work. The wise person does not waste cognitive resources on battles that cannot be won. They invest them in outcomes that can be shaped. Now think about your own empire, not Rome, your workplace, your family, your daily interactions. You are surrounded by people who would drain your cognitive budget if you let them. People who want your reaction more than your logic. People who need the fight to feel real. Marcus Aurelius had millions of people who needed his energy. He gave almost none of it to the people who did not deserve it. What would you do with the hours you are currently donating to the opinion fools, the institutional fools, and the sacred fools in your life? The answer is the most important question you will ask yourself this week. I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now. If people like me stop correcting fools, who will? Misinformation spreads. Bad ideas get normalized. Someone has to push back. That is a serious objection. It deserves a serious answer. Yes, sometimes you should correct wrong information. If someone is spreading a dangerous belief to an audience that can actually be influenced, correct it. If someone's bad decision will directly harm someone who has no other advocate, speak up. If there is a real-world consequence that will follow from silence, do not be silent. But be honest with yourself. How many of your arguments actually fit that description? Most of the arguments we have are not about preventing harm. They are about the feeling of injustice. The feeling that a wrong idea is sitting in the world uncorrected, and that this is somehow your responsibility to fix. Schopenhauer was very clear about this. He called it the ego's need for dominance. The desire to be right is not the same as the desire for truth. Most people cannot tell the difference because the feeling is identical. Both feel urgent, both feel righteous. But one of them is about the world. The other is about your ego. Here is the test. Before you engage, ask yourself, if I correct this person and they do not change their mind, and they will not, what has actually been accomplished? Who is safer? Whose life is better? What real outcome exists that did not exist before? If the answer is nothing, you are not defending truth. You are feeding your need to be seen as right. That need is human. It is not a flaw, but it is the hole through which they drain you. Every time. I need to say something uncomfortable now. The most important part of this video. You know the invoice. You have seen the 5-line items. You understand the cost. So why are you still paying it? You have argued with the same person or the same type of person dozens of times, and nothing has ever changed. Not once. You have never walked away having converted a fool into a thoughtful person. You know this. You have known it for years. So the question is not how to stop arguing with fools. You already know the answer to that. The question is why you keep choosing to start. Here are the 3 real reasons. Be honest about which one is yours. Reason 1. You believe your intelligence makes you responsible for their correction. You are smart. You see what they cannot see. And on some level, you believe that your ability to understand the truth creates an obligation to deliver it. This sounds noble, but it is actually not. It is a form of arrogance dressed up as duty. The world does not need you to correct every fool in it. The world needs you to do the work that only you can do. Those are not the same assignment. Reason 2. Their wrongness feels like a personal attack on your intelligence. When a stupid person confidently holds a stupid belief, it creates a specific kind of offense. Not just they are wrong, but they are wrong in a way that disrespects the idea of being right. And your intelligence is your most protected identity. So you engage, not to inform them, but to defend the concept of correctness, because their confidence in being wrong feels like an attack on the value of being smart. This is ego, not as a criticism, as a description. This is the ego protecting its territory. Reason. 3. The argument is easier than the real work. This one is the hardest to admit. Arguing with a fool is stimulating. It activates your brain. It creates the feeling of being engaged, of fighting for something, of being alive in opposition to a problem. Meanwhile, the actual work, the thing you are supposed to be doing with your intelligence, the difficult, slow, uncertain project that has no guaranteed outcome, that sits there, waiting, quietly asking more of you than any argument ever could. The argument is the distraction. The fool is the excuse. And you, intelligent, capable, with more potential than most people in your life, are choosing the distraction over the work. I am not saying this to be harsh. I am saying this because I have done it too. Everyone who is smart enough to know better has done it. Schopenhauer spent years in intellectual isolation, partly by choice, partly by circumstance. He was not well liked. He was not celebrated during his lifetime. He had to fight the temptation every day to engage with the critics and the fools who dismissed his work. He mostly refused. He wrote instead, for decades, for an audience he could not yet see. His books are still read 200 years later. The names of the people who argued with him in his lifetime are not remembered by anyone. The work outlasts the argument. Every time, every hour you spend arguing with a fool is an hour you did not spend becoming someone a fool cannot touch. Here is the part where I give you the tools. 4 of them. Each one is a way to refuse the invoice without creating a new conflict. Because here is the trap. Most people, when they decide to stop engaging with a fool, do it in a way that creates a new argument. They announce it. They explain why they are done. They make their exit into a statement. That is still an argument. It is just the last one. These 4 tools exit without escalating. Tool 1. The non-engagement acknowledge. You acknowledge what they said without agreeing, without arguing, and without opening a door for more. Here is how it works. A coworker states a confident but completely wrong opinion in a meeting. You say, "I hear you." Then you move on. Or, interesting perspective. Then you redirect to the agenda. They feel heard. No argument started. You paid nothing. The key is that your tone is genuinely neutral, not sarcastic, not dismissive. Neutral. Use this when the wrong opinion will not affect an actual outcome, and correction would only create conflict. Tool 2. The redirect to consequences. Instead of arguing about what is true, you redirect to what will happen, a question they actually have to engage their brain to answer. Here is how it works. A family member is insisting on a decision you know is wrong. You say, "That's possible. What happens if it doesn't work out the way you're expecting?" You did not call them wrong. You introduced reality. Their brain has to work now, if they engage thoughtfully. Progress. If they don't, you have your answer about the cost of this conversation. Use this with the sacred fool, someone you care about, when you want to open thinking without triggering defensiveness. Tool 3. The Schopenhauer exit. You disengage completely by removing yourself, physically or conversationally, without explanation, drama, or announcement. Here is how it works. An online argument has gone 3 rounds with no movement. You do nothing. You close the tab. You do not type the final response you wrote, or in person, "I need to get back to something." You stand up. You leave. The argument has no opponent. It dies. The fool waits for a response. It never comes. That silence is your power. Use this when you have already attempted engagement once and nothing has shifted. The second attempt is always more expensive than the first. Tool 4. The long game reframe. You mentally reframe the fool's argument as data, information about them, not a challenge to you, and respond accordingly. Here's how it works. A senior colleague dismisses your idea with obvious intellectual laziness. In your head, this tells me something useful about how they think. I will factor it in. What you say out loud. Thanks for the input. You write down their objection privately. You use that objection to build a better version of the idea that addresses their concern on the surface. Their foolishness made your work stronger. You charge them instead. Use this with the institutional fool when you need to work with them long-term and direct resistance is not an option. I want to tell you who you become when you stop paying the invoice. You do not become passive. You do not become someone who accepts wrong things and says nothing. You become selective. And selective people are the most dangerous kind of intelligent. Think about the people you most respect, the ones who are genuinely formidable in their field, in their thinking, in the way they move through the world. Do they argue with everyone who is wrong? Or do they choose their battles so precisely that when they do speak, the room goes quiet? Schopenhauer called this the conservation of will, not the absence of will, the conservation of it. The way a great fighter does not throw punches at the air. The way a great writer does not publish every thought. The way a great investor does not respond to every market fluctuation. They wait, they build, they choose the moment. And when they act, it is with the full force of everything they did not waste on lesser things. That is what is available to you on the other side of this. Every fool you stop arguing with is a deposit into something else. Time, cognitive clarity, creative capacity, the slow, patient building of a life that a fool could never dismantle because you stopped letting them inside the gate. The argument feels important in the moment. It is not. The work you were avoiding feels uncertain and slow. It is not. The fool will be forgotten. The work remains. Invest accordingly. Your action for the next 24 hours. Find one recurring argument in your life, one person or one type of situation you keep engaging with at cost. Name the line items on the invoice. Calculate the actual price. Then decide for just the next 24 hours to pay nothing. Not permanently, just today. See what that time and energy becomes when it is not spent. Take the invoice with you. Every time you feel the pull to engage, run through the 5 line items. Fast. Ask what you are actually paying for. If this shifted something in how you see these interactions, subscribe. Not for the algorithm, because the next video answers the question this one just opened. Here is the question. If you stop arguing with fools, stop correcting them, stop engaging with them entirely, what happens to the people around you who are watching? Because your silence is not invisible. It sends a message. And depending on how you carry it, that message is either weakness or something that makes people in the room very uncomfortable about their own behavior. The difference between those two outcomes is a specific skill. That is next.